Well, welcome back. I finally made it outside after, clean you up a wee bit. After what feels like weeks and weeks of being stuck in the house, I finally made it outside again. It's been a pretty busy couple of weeks since I was last out. Last walk, and in fact the last time I did anything outside was the hike I did up on Anport, which was absolutely fantastic. But sometimes I think the better the time that you have outdoors, the more depressed you'd be afterwards, and the more you want to get back out again. So it's been a bit tough sitting in for the last couple of weeks. We've had a spell of incredibly cold weather for about a week or 8 days, and for about 5 days the actual temperatures at night and in the early morning were all in around about -6 to -8, and there were some days it never got above freezing at all, even during the middle of what should be the warmest part of the day. So getting out and about was pretty difficult, and then of course when the thaw come, what comes with it but heavy rain. But anyway, I'm out today, yo! Anyway, and it's Christmas Eve. Happy Christmas! Yeah, it's Christmas Eve. I've been looking forward to getting out today for, well, I've been looking forward since the last time I was out, but I've been watching the weather all week, and despite it being wet and miserable all week, today had been given it to be a nice dry and sunny day. So set the alarm. Well, it's not that early. It was 8 o'clock this morning, but I suppose it's early on my day off, and the plan was to get up early, get outside, come out to the woods, because I've got something new with me today that I have been itching to try out since they arrived in the post about a week ago. I've been like a Wayne waiting for them to come. Pure child, you talk about Christmas coming. That's what it was like. I'll explain what that is in a moment. But anyway, woke up this morning at 8 o'clock to the sound of rain absolutely thumping off the roof. It was that bad you just couldn't go out in it. So I've been sitting in the house all morning, feeling bad about it, beating myself up. Had a wee chat with a couple of the guys on WhatsApp, and Martin of Soul Trail gave me a very good point, which is just edit your plans and get out. Well, I haven't actually had to edit my plan after all, but I have got out. The weather cleared up shortly after complaining, so maybe that's my Santa present, come early. It's still quite grey and miserly, but sure, listen, it's not lashing rain anymore and I'm outside. So what's my new thing? I bought myself a new pair of boots. Whoa! I've been messing around this last year or so with cheaper alternatives for boots, and I've been trying out some ex-army hiking boots. Well, ex-army boots that I've been using as hiking boots. So I got myself 2 pairs. Got a desert pair for drier, warmer weather, and got a really good leather pair, Gore-Tex lined, for wetter and colder weather. And that's what they're actually called, is a wet and cold. Anyway, I'll put the proper name of them up on the screen. Both boots are by a brand or a company called Aturi, and they are really, really good boots. But Jesus, they're heavy, and it really struck home to me on the walk that I did up in the Galties. Jesus, that's over a month ago now actually, just how heavy they were on my feet when I was tired and trying to climb up some of those steeper hills. So I've been saving up for a while now, and being the fanboy that I am, this is number 2 shout out for Martin on Soul Trail. He did a really, really good video recently about his new boots, which are the Handwag Nazcats, and I've gone for the same boot. It was the toss-up between Mindel and Handwag. I have had Mindel boot. My last really good pair of boots are Mindels, or were, well, they still are Mindels. They're just beat to hell now, and I was very, very pleased with those, and they've done me for about 20 years. So I'm hoping that these Handwag boots do me for something similar. So they're on me. This is their very inaugural walk. Very first time getting out in them. The only other time I've had them on my feet is in the house, just trying them on for size and have no ego around the house on them. So listen, thanks for joining me again. This is just a little walk out in the woods. I have some stuff I want to talk about, and hopefully if the rain stays off, I'm going to go up into the trees, make myself a cup of tea and sit and chill out for a wee while. But I'm out. Yay! I know I do a lot of talking on YouTube anyway, but this is going to be a bit of a talky video today. But I want to talk about one thing, well, 5 things in particular actually. So, and it's the 5 things that I have learned in 2022 from YouTube, from other YouTube channels, other YouTube outdoor channels. And when I mean things that I've learned, I mean 5 things that will make hiking or wild camping that little bit easier and more enjoyable, and possibly more comfortable as well as part of that. Some of these are things that I have started doing. Some of these are things that I'm going to use in 2023. So the first tip is one that I learned quite early on in the year from watching Jason and his great channel called Rambling On. And it's to do with how you stow and how you carry your walking poles when they're not in use. So walking poles can be a bit of a pain when they're not in use, and Jason has a great video which I'm going to link to. I'm going to link to all the videos down below where I can, and where there's something specific that you need to see and learn. But Jason demonstrates a very nifty way of stowing your walking poles away on any rucksack, any kind of bag, as long as it has straps, with 2 simple carabiner clips. And you can see one of them here on this bag. So using some stretchy bungee cord and 2 carabiner clips, it's very easy. You can clip your walking poles on here and down low on the strap at the bottom of your bag as well, and they're out of your way whenever you don't need them, and they're very easily accessible when you do need them. It's kind of inspired by the Osprey system stowaway or something like that, or pack away. They have a name for it, but this allows you to do it on any of your bags, and it's you can interchange it between your bags, and you can also, well, I suppose you could set it up on as many bags as you want because it's cheap and easy to do. So that's my number 1 tip. I've been using that on pretty much all of my hikes since I've seen Jason do it, and it is really, really handy. And if you're a YouTube filmer and you create content and you use a tripod, then you could actually stow your tripod in the same way. That's tip number 1. Thanks, Jason. That's the most useful tip I've had all year. So then, tip number 2. Number 1 and number 2 are both tips that I use all the time now, and I think what the beauty of both of them, and probably the beauty of most tips that you'll come across, is their simplicity and their ease of implementation, and just to build it into your everyday hiking, walking, camping, whatever you want to do. It'll come as no surprise that this was something I seen from Martin on Soul Trail. Starting to sound like a real fanboy, but Martin's videos are excellent, and Martin's a lovely guy as well, really nice guy. So if you don't follow Martin's channel, you're really missing out. But this was a tip that he showed from really early back on in the summer, and it was about different lacing systems for your boots. Now, I haven't really implemented all the different systems that Martin shows in that video because I haven't had, thankfully I haven't had any of the problems that some of those lacing systems are designed to alleviate. But the one simplest of all the tips that he showed was about using what's called a surgeon's knot to tie your laces. No matter what boots I've worn over the years, I've always had that, that feeling you get when you're walking along after maybe an hour or 2 hours on the trail and your boots aren't as tight or as snug. I like high boots, and I like them high up round, high cuff, and high up around my legs, and I like that snug feeling of them tied reasonably tight around my shins. But I would find that they would slacken over time, and you'd have to stop, retie them, and then move on. And that's a particular pain in the backside if you're wearing gaiters, because you have to take the gaiters off to loosen and then tie up your boots again. So the surgeon's knot prevents that, and it is so simple. It is just a double wrap at the very, very start of your knot. So I'm gonna put a link again down in the description to Martin's video, and he shows it and all the other lacing systems in great detail. So definitely worth watching that if you're having any kind of issues, aches or pains in your feet whenever you're out walking. It might not be due to your boots, it might be just something to do with your feet. It could be a temporary thing, but Martin shows you some great lacing systems that help alleviate foot pain. But that surgeon's knot, A1, Martin. Absolutely brilliant tip, and I have been using it on all of my boots ever since, and it's made a huge difference, so thanks for that. That's tip number 2. No tea. After going to all the effort of setting up my chair and unpacking all my tea making gear, I realised I left my meths bottle at home, so no tea. And thankfully this is just a wee short 6-7k walk out in the woods, and not an emergency situation on a hike. Makes me think of Jerry McVeigh's, one of his recent videos. Jerry's a hard man, a tough man. He bivvies in weather that most people wouldn't even put the dog out in, and he goes up into the mountains and bivvies in it. He did a recent bivvy in sub-zero conditions and managed to leave his gas stove at home, so he had no tea, no hot food, either for his supper, dinner, or for his breakfast the next morning, and he still stayed out. So I think I can manage with no cup of tea in the forest for an hour. Anyway, Tip number 3 isn't about gear management, it's about water management. Over the years, I've got into the habit and got used to carrying a water bladder in my bag. Now there's a lot of positives and a lot of negatives to carrying a water bladder. You've got loads of water, it's easily stored away, and you've got the little pipe or the little tube, drinking tube just here, easily accessible, and you can drink away at your water. And what I tend to find is when I used the water bladder, I drank more, I stayed better hydrated than if I had a bottle in my bag, for the simple reason that I was too lazy to take the bloody bag off and get my bottle out and drink from it. So having the water bladder tube there, you didn't have to think about it, you didn't have to take the bag off, you just sipped away and you were good to go. The downside of the water bladder that I found, well, this is partly this is my own fault. I had a 2 litre water bladder and I felt I had to fill it to the top. So you're always carrying a lot of water at the start of your hike. It gets heavy. The other downside of it that I didn't like as well is I couldn't keep control. I couldn't keep check of how much water I was drinking and how much water I had left. So the actual management of water on the walk, how much I was drinking and rationing it properly, that I didn't drink too much at the start and run out too close to the end. And that actually caught me out on a hike a long time ago now, when I did a big walk up on Donegal and did a loop of Loch Alton as well, and I ran out of water about an hour before I finished, and I found that quite tough. So this year I've changed slightly. I've got, you've probably seen the little day bag that I'm carrying today. It's from Decathlon. I think it's a 20 litre bag. There's a bigger version of it as well, which is great for wild camping and stuff like that. And again, Jason from Rambling On that I mentioned earlier on, he's a big fan of these bags, and he has both the big bag and the small bag. But anyway, the reason I really like this small bag is it's got side pouches, very like Osprey. They're big enough to hold a 750ml water bottle, and they can be accessed without taking your bag off. They're a stretchy pocket. You just tuck your hand around and pull them out, and your water can be put back in again. So what I find was that has suited me really, really well this year. I've been drinking much better on the trail when I've been out walking, and I've also been able to keep an eye on how much water I'm drinking, to make sure that first of all I'm drinking enough, but secondly that I'm not drinking too much too quick and I'm going to run out of it towards the end. However, during the year I have been thinking a lot more about water management, because I suppose as hikers, and especially wild campers, but even as hikers, there's a big emphasis on the amount of weight that you're carrying on your back and trying to reduce the amount of weight. And water's heavy, there's no two ways about it. So I've invested recently. I haven't actually used this on a hike yet, but this is going to be one of the things that I want to try and get into the habit of doing for 2023, and hopefully it becomes a long-lasting habit for me, and that is carrying a water filter. Carrying one bottle only, 750, maybe a 500 milliliter bottle, and using water from natural water sources as I go along. So it's going to take a wee bit of getting used to. It's going to take a wee bit of planning on the walks and being a bit more aware. But hey, it's Ireland. We don't have any shortage of water. And thankfully, most of the walking that I'm doing is in upland areas where there's going to be lots of little streams and brooks and pools and stuff like that. And there shouldn't be much contamination of the water. It took me quite a while to decide what filter to go for. The two main ones out there are the Be Free filter from Katadyn, and the other one is the Sawyer, and there's 2 or 3 different versions of those. But after a good bit of consideration, thinking about it and looking at loads and loads of YouTube videos, I decided to go for the Katadyn Be Free. I think what swung me towards it was that both Paul Messner and Simon, a bloke in the woods, both use it as their go-to filter. So I thought, listen, those guys are doing a lot more walking, and both of them, Simon in particular, does a lot of water filtering, and he actually has a really, really good video about water filtering they put out recently. With those guys, Simon in particular, as I said, filters a lot of water a lot of times out on walks and camps, and both of them use the Katadyn Be Free as their go-to filter. One point that I have picked up about filters is wintertime with filters you have to be very, very careful. If you are wild camping and you're camping in sub-zero conditions, you have to be very, very careful with your filter, because obviously there's water inside the filter, inside the little filtration system at the top of the bottle, and if that freezes, the ice crystals will damage your filter and leave it that it's just not filtering water safely any longer. So that's point number 3, water management. Tip number 4. Now, I feel like I have to point out before I describe tip number 4 is that I do not have an unhealthy obsession with Martin's Soul Trail channel. I do watch other channels as well as Soul Trail, but it just so happens that Martin has come up with some really great tips this year that I've taken on board. So tip number 4 then is about managing your feet, and it's quite a timely one. As I said earlier on, I'm out trying out my new boots, and I'm using the first, or I'm trying out the first of these tips that Martin recommended in a great video from that he put out in the autumn time. Oh, it's getting really windy now. That Martin put out in the autumn time was titled something along the lines of why he never gets blisters, and it's all about how he cares for and manages his feet before, during and after walks, hikes and wild camps and so on. One of the tips that he came up with was taking out the OEM insoles from the boots that they come with, because they tend usually to be very light and thin and don't have any additional cushioning in them, and replacing them with a better insole. So that's what I have done with these new boots, and that's what I'm walking on today, and I have to say so far I'm quite pleased with them. There's extra cushioning in the heel, where I suppose you get the most abuse from your upper body pressing down on your feet. They also have really good arch support, which is quite key for me, because on my left foot in particular I have a bit of a fallen arch, and it would be prone to plantar fasciitis, so having that in my walking boots should provide me with a lot of comfort, particularly on long walks. The second part of this tip is about whenever you start to get hot spots, or preventing hot spots on your feet. And for long years I've always used those kind of strip adhesive band-aid things that you cut to the piece that you want, and I would have put those on the backs of my heels and occasionally on the sides of my feet, if well, sometimes more out in the summertime if you get very hot sweaty feet and your boots start to rub or your socks start to rub. I haven't had issues with that for a long time because I've changed the socks that I use, but I would occasionally, especially if I haven't been out walking for a while, I would get issues with the boots rubbing on the back of my heels. I'm actually really pleased to say that I'm getting no rub with these boots whatsoever, and I'm just out with my regular socks and no heel protection at all. But anyway, what Martin recommends, instead of using that adhesive tape, is to use physio tape. It's the really highly sticky stuff that physios use to strap up joints, usually whenever they need stabilization. For, you'll see runners, athletes and so on using them, and they're to stabilize a joint or to hold a joint in a particular way. I had an issue with my shoulder a couple of years ago where I had a rotator cuff injury, and the physio used that tape to strap it up to improve my posture. And I'll tell you what, it doesn't come off until you really want it to come off. So it's a great product to use inside your boots if you think your feet might get wet, or if you're worried about sweating inside your boots, rubbing the tape off. So I haven't actually used that yet. I think if I'm ever going to in a situation where I need the band-aid adhesive tape, I'm going to use the physio tape instead, and I've invested in a roll of it. It's dirt cheap. Got a roll of it off Amazon for, it was less than a tenner. I think it was either 5, 6 or 8 quid, something like that, and it's a great thing to have. So that's tip number 4 about feet management. I've seen this stump a couple of times in the woods now, and every time I come here it's a little bit more worn down. I've seen deer, probably red deer I'd say, wandering about here a couple of times as well. So I think what's happening is the deer are coming here and they're rubbing their probably their antlers just at the time of the year whenever they're trying to get the felt off them, or just rubbing their antlers in general against the rotten stump, and it's gradually wearing it down. You've got the pile of shavings lying at the bottom, or chips of their old rotten wood lying at the bottom. It's quite cool. Either that, or it's a huge termite mound, one of the two. I think it's a wee bit cold here in Donegal for termites, but I don't know. Still pretty cool. Before I talk about tip number 5 that I've learned from YouTube in 2022, I just want to say thank you to everyone that has subscribed and watched my videos, commented, give thumbs up and so on during 2022. I'm out now on Christmas Eve, so by the time I get this video edited and posted up, it's going to be probably the first week of 2023. So as I said, I want to say a big thank you to everyone. YouTube's a very recent thing for me this year, and what I have to say is it has brought an extra element of enjoyment to my outdoor activities, and it's also brought me some great friends as well this year that was totally unexpected. So as I say, thanks to everyone. I'm making these videos for me mainly. I really enjoy doing them. They're helping me get out and giving me a wee bit of extra motivation to get out, and I'm absolutely loving sharing them with other people, and I'm absolutely delighted that other people seem to be enjoying them as well. Still baffles me that people want to watch me talking rubbish and out in the outdoors, but listen, that wasn't the main aim, but I'm absolutely delighted with that as a side effect of it all. So listen, I hope everyone watching this had a happy and a safe Christmas, and a very happy new year to everyone as well, and here's to a cracking 2023. This part of the forest I'm coming into now is my favourite section. It's this forest is just a very typical Quilcha timber factory forest, but this section here now you can possibly see in the camera down both sides of the track. There's a number of larch trees planted in amongst the Sitka spruce, the standard Sitka spruce. And what I love about the larch is it's a wee bit late in the season now, but during the autumn the needles on the larch turn a real lovely beautiful golden brown colour, and a lot of them fall off the larch trees as well. It's kind of halfway between a deciduous and an evergreen tree. It doesn't know what it wants to be, but you get carpets all along the track here as well, all the way down there. You get carpets of the larch needles as well, so at the right time of the year it's absolutely beautiful here. It just kind of, if you're out for a day's walk, just the additional colour and just the variety just lifts me whenever I'm walking along. And the other thing as well is there's some quite deep drains along here, and a lot of wet ground up in there into the Sitka plantation, so you get a lot of water draining down, and the drains are all gurgling and bubbling along as you're walking along here. So yeah, this is my favourite part of this forest. So tip number 5 then. So this is the 5th and final tip that I've personally learned from YouTube in 2022, that I hope I'm going to carry into 2023 and beyond. Stick around to the very end and I'm going to give you my own tip, for want of a better word. But tip number 5 is about layering. And you're probably thinking to yourself, sure Jesus, that's pretty obvious, everybody knows about layering. And as you can probably see, I'm a big fan of layering. I think I'm wearing about 4 today altogether. A couple of light layers, thick layer, and then my shell on top. And the hat comes and goes as a layer, fingerless gloves, waterproof trousers. That's all layering. But what's been at the back of my mind this year, and what I had confirmed just a couple of weeks ago, is that layering can be used in wild camping for your sleep system as well. I suppose like most people that are just starting into wild camping, I've only really been on 2 wild camps, and you started off, you buy cheaper gear just to get you going to see if you're going to enjoy it or not, and then you decide then you want to upgrade it. The sleep system is probably one of the more expensive things that you can buy. A good down sleeping bag and a good high R rated sleeping pad are worth a lot of money, but they do cost an awful lot of money. But they make a huge difference to your comfort when you're wild camping, particularly in the colder months, early spring, late autumn, and if you want to camp into the winter as well. So I was watching 2 American channels recently that I don't watch regularly. One is Dan Becker. The other guy, I can't remember the name of his channel now, but I'll pop it up on the screen. He's actually quite good, but it's just the volume of stuff that those guys produce, I can't keep up with it, so I sort of dip in and out of it on occasions. But both of them spoke about sleep pads and layering within your sleep system recently. Dan Becker talked about sleeping pads, and the other guy talked about your actual sleeping bags. And it is possible to layer up with both. So if you have a 3-season sleeping bag, you can layer up first of all by wearing some warm clothes, maybe a down jacket, down trousers inside the sleeping bag. It's going to keep you a lot warmer. One thing I would have done anyway, and I was very much aware of, is wearing a hat or a balaclava inside your sleeping bag to keep your head warm and increase your core temperature inside the bag. But the other thing to do is having a lighter sleeping bag draped over your cheaper sleeping bag, and the two combining together to improve insulation and so on. Now, one point that he did make, and a very, very good point, is that you don't want to put one sleeping bag inside another, because then you're going to squash them too much and you're going to reduce the amount of insulation. The ideal situation seems to be a sleeping bag with a quilt over the top. The video of Dan Becker put out was about sleeping pads, and it is actually possible to take 2 cheap sleeping pads and make 1 great sleeping pad out of them. If your sleeping pads are R rated, so for example I have an inflatable sleeping pad that has an R rating somewhere between 2 and 3, so let's just say 2.5 for example. I also have a folding foam sleeping mat from Decathlon, which is an R rating of 2. If you put the foam one down first and then put the inflatable one on top of it, then you can actually add the R values together. So effectively I already have a sleeping pad that has an R rating of 4.5 when you combine the two together. Now I suppose the downside of that is that you're carrying 2 sleeping pads. You're carrying a sleeping bag and maybe an additional sleeping bag or a quilt. So the amount of weight and the bulk that you're carrying does increase. But what it has helped me to do is decide what's the next piece of gear that I want to upgrade, and I've decided that that's going to be my sleeping bag. I think a good quality sleeping bag, and I can combine it with the double sleeping mats for now, and tackle the sleeping mat later on in the year. So that's my 5th tip that I've picked up, is that layering isn't just for your upper body and for your clothes, that layering is for your sleeping system as well. So what's the final tip that I want to talk about? Well, that's something personal that I've discovered over the years, and the one piece of advice that I would give to everyone is just get outside. I don't cycle very much anymore, but from my days cycling there was always one kind of overriding theme, was a bad day on the bike is better than a good day at work. And I think that applies to anything in the outdoors really. I have never come home from a cycle or a hike or a walk and felt worse than what I did before I went out. And the huge majority of the time I feel so much better coming home than I did when I was leaving the house. It's not for everyone, but I would say if you're in any way kind of curious, just get outside, just go for a walk. It doesn't have to be anything spectacular or adventurous. All my videos are just typical little mini adventures. You don't need fantastic gear. The simplest thing in the world that we all learn to do from a very young age is walk. Just throw on a warm coat an old cheap hat, a pair of comfortable shoes. Just get outside, go for a walk in your local countryside, in your local roads even just go to the local park. Just go for 10-15 minutes, go and sit on a bench, do anything at all. If you're in any kind of doubt about whether outside is for you, it is 100% definitely for everyone. And just being outside in the fresh air and the sunshine will do wonders for the vast majority of people. We put lots of obstacles and blockers in our way. We talk about we don't have the right gear. You don't need to have much gear to go for a walk. And so what the hell if you get wet? You know, go out for 15-20 minutes, come home, change into dry clothes, and you're good to go again. So that is my number one tip that I would give to anyone, is just get outdoors, get out as much as you can and as often as you can, and just enjoy it and enjoy life. So that's my 5 things that I've learned from YouTube in 2022. I hope you enjoyed them. I hope you got something out of those. I'm going to put a link down below in the description for any of the tips that I have learned from others, and if there's an accompanying video that they have put out on YouTube, and so that you can watch the full video. And all of those people that I've mentioned, majority of them are channels I follow on a regular basis, so you might consider giving them a subscribe and a follow as well, and seeing what you think. As I say, I hope you enjoyed it. If there's any tips that you have picked up recently and you'd like to share with me or anyone else that follows my videos, just stick a comment down below. It's interesting to see what things people have picked up, and sometimes you can be out for years and then pick up something from random. So as always, thanks for watching this video. And as I said earlier on, thanks for everyone who watches all my videos and comments and likes, and all my subscribers. I've had a ball on YouTube for 2022, and I'm hoping that this continues on for a good few years. So thanks again, and see you next time.